on the stage. These are resources of our partners who are investing in startups, both corporate venturing arms and venture capital firms. They're also corporate innovating. So what you'll see is that they're partnering with startups. They're taking on the risk to partner with startups to disrupt their own industries. And then finally, what they're also doing is providing you professional services so you can focus on what you do well, and that's growing your business, while they focus on items like insurance and real estate and legal, etc. So Hyde Park Angels is trying to build a stronger community so entrepreneurs can succeed with a people's first approach. So based on what we're trying to do, I did want to recognize, before we get started, recognize any of the Hyde Park Angel members that are in the audience. If you could raise your hands, would appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so that gives you a little sense. We answered 3 questions, and the panel is going to answer a host of other questions now. But to help prep them so that they know who's in the audience and what you're thinking, I'm going to ask 3 questions of you. I answered 3, now you have to answer 3, but we'll just do it by a show of hands. How many in the room are entrepreneurs or thinking about starting their own business, so potential entrepreneurs? If you could raise your hand, I would appreciate it. All right. So how many of you, and the question is going to be twofold, how many of you are thinking about bootstrapping your business, meaning that you're not going to raise capital to grow your business? How many people are thinking about bootstrapping? All right, about half. How many people have made the decision that they're going to raise capital? All right, about another half. So, great news. This panel is going to answer a lot of questions, hopefully help you make the right decisions on making that bootstrap or raising capital decision. So with that, Craig, I'll hand it over to you, and if we could do a round of introductions, that'd be great.
Great, thank you, Pete. My name is Craig Vodnik. I'm one of the co-founders of a global subscription billing platform called Cleverbridge. Started the company 11 years ago here in Chicago as well as in Cologne, Germany, so we have a fairly unusual background story. But we have bootstrapped the company from the beginning. We've never taken any venture money. We've grown from the second year in as a profitable business all the way till now, continuing to be profitable. And I'm also a Hyde Park Angel member. And I want to also shout out to U of I. I'm a U of I grad in nuclear engineering. I'm not using it anymore, as you can tell, but ask me hard questions later if you want.
Pam Netsky, I'm one of the co-founders of Skinny Top Popcorn. I was co-founder of a popcorn company called Wall Street Popcorn around 2008. We had retail popcorn stores throughout the Chicagoland area. The plan was that we were going to blow it out throughout the country, and the goal was 100 stores in 5-6 years. And the world changed in 2008. We decided to take a different course of action. Let's see how we can grow our existing business within our retail stores already. So we tried to grow a wholesale business. We tried to increase frequency of our current customers. What we were finding was that people were saying, "This is the greatest popcorn I've ever had in my life. I'll see you in 6 months. I'll see you in a year." The problem being that it was not very healthy for you, and it was very off-trend at the time. So we tried to come up with a better for you popcorn to sell within our retail stores that we already had. And in the same moment that we identified that recipe and what we wanted to sell, we also identified we did not want people thinking about calories when they came to the store. That was submarine our current business. We're going to package it. We're going to call it Skinny Popcorn to sell in grocery stores. And thus, the Skinny Popcorn was born. We sold our first bag in August 2010. We basically borrowed the money from Wall Street Popcorn and repaid that debt within about 6 to 8 weeks. And we had a couple things along the way, but we didn't need bootstrap. We had to raise the capital to grow our business.
I'm Christy Ross, and I am the co-CEO and president of Tasty Trading Dough and co-founder of Dough.com. I've been in and around the trading and beverage industry for about 25 years. Tasty Trading Dough started about 5 years ago, and over the course of that 5 years, we raised 3 different types of capital. So I'm sure I'll talk about that on the panel a little bit here. but back in, well, prior to Tasty Trade and Dough, I was the CFO of Thinkorswim, an online brokerage firm, and we sold to TD Ameritrade for $750 million. And really over the course of my career, I've been involved in almost 20 mergers, acquisitions, capital raises, and that kind of sums it up.
Excellent.
I am Bill Pescatello. I'm a partner with Life Bank here in Chicago. So I've been doing about venture about the last 10 years. Life Bank is kind of a different type of venture fund. We do a little bit of everything. So we're generally early stage investors. We invested in about 97 companies to date. So we started the fund basically 2010, 2011. Eric Lukowski and Brad Kuehl are the founders there. We started Equity Logistics, Networking, Media Bank, and Groupon. So 2010, 2011, we started it. Yeah, we do a mix. So we do a mix of incubated companies, so things that we start in-house. So Belly is an example of one, which we started with Logan Hyde. We partnered with Dough and worked with Christy and Tom there, and have done a number of things across the way. But prior to Life Bank, helped start a venture fund for MC Universal. So I was working at MC at the time, worked with a lot of the corporate dev folks there in terms of getting a fund started there. That was a little bit later stage, more VC. So I've been fortunate enough to be from investing in ideas to more established companies.
Thanks.
Hi there, I'm Caitlin Smith. This is quite the panel to follow, by the way. So I founded Simple Mills. We make simple ingredient, real food baking mixes. We've been around for about 2.5 years now, and we are in about 2,000 stores now. So we're growing very quickly, but we're much smaller than these businesses here. And we have raised both a seed round and a Series A over the past 2 years. So I can answer some of the questions more around what it's like to raise those early rounds.
And hopefully they'll rub off and you'll have the same success as the rest of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to give you a sense, the idea on the panel is to have a diverse panel of experts to give you insights as you're making these decisions, because one of the things that we know at Hyde Park Angels, taking capital doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Bootstrapping doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful. And we brought panelists on that have funded companies as well as received funding, so you can think through, from their perspective, how you might approach it. Because the one thing for sure, if there was a formula for surefire success, then everybody would be doing it. And so the idea, and Howard pointed it to it earlier, is that the idea of the panel tonight is to give you insights on how people are making decisions, which might allow you to make more effective decisions. So with that, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about your companies, and as you started to look at how you were going to grow those companies, your approach to fueling its growth. Was it going to be primarily by taking product to market and seeing if there's traction, which would allow you to subsidize it, or was raising capital right out of the gate something that you thought about, and how did you approach it? So with that, I'll start with Craig. Craig, from your perspective, give us a sense of your trajectory of building your company and how you were thinking about tapping the capital markets or not.
Right, so I think a little bit of background about Clever Bridge, where we came from, will give you some of, I think, the answers, and I'll talk about them. Myself and 3 of my friends out of Germany, we worked at a company together before Clever Bridge, before we started Clever Bridge. And what happened was that company was acquired. I became friends with these guys before the acquisition. I didn't know it was coming, but we knew a lot about our business. We had a lot of connections in the industry, and the day that the acquisition happened, we sort of looked at each other and said, hey, we can do this ourselves. We didn't really set out to be entrepreneurs, but we saw this opportunity that presented itself. So we spent some months working together, figuring out what it is that we would do to be different. How could we create or innovate on what we already knew? And so the good news was we were all in our mid-30s at that time, so we all had some savings, and basically we were able to pool our money together to start the business. So we went 2.5 years without taking a salary, while we were hiring other people to do the work, to build the platform, to go into market. So, at the time that we were starting the business, we never really thought about taking money. I mean, we didn't need to. We had some money, We got, you know, about a million euros that we put together. So that's kind of news for some of my employees who are here, but it was a long time ago. And so the point is that, you know, we had some money, and so we were able to pay some people, but we didn't take any salaries. As we went along, if we would not have had a salesperson or the ability to sell and get business relatively quickly, we would have run into a problem. Fortunately for us, within a year, we had our first client. After 2 years, we were already profitable, so we never needed to go into the capital markets.
So from your position, you already had some reserves that you had built, and you were going to focus on how do you grow that business without tapping the capital markets. And what we'll do is we'll talk about, once you make that decision to have a capital partner invest, what are the ramifications and why there's a reason that you don't necessarily want to have a capital partner. So Christy, you've seen a number of transactions, and you know that not everybody's in Craig's position to be able to make that decision. If you were to advise an entrepreneur as they look at deciding if they need to raise capital, what would you tell them?
So that's a loaded question, right? Because it depends on sort of the type of company, where they want to go, what stage they're at. First of all, I'll give a little bit of history about even our company today, because I think that will also sort of help kind of tell that story. One of the things we started out with 5 years ago, we actually started out with convertible debt. Now, convertible debt is something that normally, from an investor standpoint, is not, may not be all that favorable from a standpoint of, having voting power or a board seat or any control whatsoever, except for possibly upon conversion if the company's doing really well. We were lucky enough to be able to find an investor like that early on, and it worked out perfectly for us. That's not always the case, because there are issues then later for some companies on valuation, and that's where investors don't always want to do convertible debt. But I would say that depending upon what your growth trajectory looks like, how quickly you need to accelerate, or if it is an idea that speed to market is critical, that's one of those things where I would say you should really consider raising capital, because not only can an investor help you with money with your speed to market, accelerating that growth or penetration, but also with their resources and their connections, especially, because you're going to look for an investor that's in that industry. That's something that really can pay back tenfold when you're looking at raising capital.
So I think that's helpful. And what I'll do for the audience, because I know that when you raise your hands, there's people that are just exploring, starting their company, some are engaged in that. So what I will help set the stage as you're thinking through this, bootstrapping has an advantage, because once you have invested capital into your business, you are getting married. And you're getting married, and it is by having a capital partner, you are marrying a capital partner, and what you give up of your business are two things. Control, meaning that you're now going to have somebody that's going to give you their opinion on how to run your business, and they can run the gamut. Control is one thing. And then you don't own 100%. You're going to have to give up some equity. So to make this as simple as we can and very basic, when you get a capital partner and you're not bootstrapping it, you are going to have to give up some element of control and some element of equity. And I think when we're talking about this, I will say one other thing, is that the reason Hyde Park Angels is spending time on thinking bootstrapping or getting investment is because the game is not about raising capital to grow your business. The game is about growing your business and using capital to do it better. So keep that in mind as we think about that. We talked about convertible notes, and so what I'm going to do from Bill, you're the expert and understanding. Maybe just give a quick overview, because we're going to get into some buzzwords quickly. Maybe talk about what a price round convertible note is and a safe, which is up and coming. If you could define those three so we can talk about how we consider those elements, okay?
I mean, so, yeah, so those are the three primary vehicles that people are using right now. Convertible notes, you see more and more, and it actually makes a lot of sense in a way if you can get away with it. You can get it, and people are comfortable not having the control that you generally have and the protections you have with the price round. Convertible notes can be very useful, especially for first-time entrepreneurs, because it can allow you a lot of times to do rolling closes. And so basically, you can have a note out there. It doesn't rely necessarily on people pricing the round then. So a convertible note you can do, it basically is going to be priced on the next raise you raise. So if you raise another round, let's say you have a qualified financing, say you raise anything more than $1 million, it's going to be converted based on those terms. And so usually there's a cap. So let's say you got a $5 million cap. No matter what you raise next round, if you raise more than $1 million going forward, your equity is going to be converted at a $5 million valuation. It also generally has a discount. So everything's kind of priced in the next round. And it's useful for angels in particular, because they're generally have just no idea or they're not sure, how do I price this company with no cash flows, there's no multiples, it's just that people are putting their finger in the air and just guessing. But having a note.
That never happens in VC, everybody knows, right?
Yeah, completely, 100%.
Everyone knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, even when venture investors price things, especially at the earliest stage, really the seed stage, it's really just looking at comps. It's looking at this sort of company, this sort of opportunity, the type of founders, and it's like pattern recognition and what's in the market and what do I think I really should pay. I would love to say that there's like magical DCFs and I'm looking at multiples and like everything's 100% quantified, but there's some parts that there's like art and there's science in the mix there. And so the beautiful thing about the convertible debt is it allows people to price, but it's going to really get converted to a price in that next round. Safes, which is the other vehicle that's out there, was started by Y Combinator, kind of put it out there. It's very founder friendly, and the idea behind it was sometimes convertible notes often have a maturity. So if you can't raise money like in 18 months, they can ask for their money back. And so at that point, they can force a company out of business. They may force you to negotiate something. And I know people from YC are like, why does it make any sense? Like these people are making higher risk equity bets, and why should they have a debt structure with maturity at the end of it? So safes were created that it only can, if there's no like maturity or there's like a debt structure, we have to pay it back. So it's much more friendly. It doesn't have to close the bill in 18 months, and so you see more and more people, especially on the West Coast, are using safes.
It certainly is. So I'll frame this up for you. So price round, somebody will say your business is worth $7. And I know all your businesses are worth $70 million, but we're just going to start with $7 because that's about as high as I can calculate quickly. So $7, and somebody comes in and says, this is how much your business, I'm going to invest $3. So after I invest and you have $7, the whole company's worth $10. Or we'll say $10 million, it'll be more fun. So $7 million your company's worth, that's how much I think it is, but that's the valuation. I'm a capital partner, I'm going to invest $3 million, your company is now going to be worth $10 million. I own 30%, you own 70%, and then what I also get, so that's equity, like I said. And the other thing is, oh, by the way, I get to be on your board. So it's me and you and maybe another person, there's 3 of us, and every time we're going to make a really important decision that we'll define, I get a vote, you get a vote, and the other person gets a vote. When you're bootstrapping, you own 100%, and you don't have anybody on your board, unless you have an advisory board, but there you get control over that. Convertible notes, the nice thing about them is they are a debt. So it's a loan that converts to equity at, as Bill was talking about, at a certain price. And so a convertible note means that you owe me money. You're going to give me money, and it usually does not, you're usually not paying us because you're a startup, but the idea is there that I own, you owe me money, and then it's going to convert to equity once you have a price drop. So it's an easy way to manage to that. And then safes don't have any debt element. And they're new, and they sure are entrepreneurial friendly, and there's a variety of things. We have all of this information that we'll define on our blog at HydeParkAngels.com with our newsletter. And the reason I say this is because everybody in this audience, typically, at least 70%, these are important things to understand, and we try to explain them simply so that you understand the mechanism for them. So,
Sure, Bill. I was just say one thing. If you're raising your first round, and you're going through this, like, don't pay a ton of legal fees and get someone to like overly like complicate something. There's like perfectly good docs you can find from like NVCA, National Venture Association, or you go to Y Combinator. They're all there. Their templates are like ready to go. Obviously, you should have counsel and have people that can walk you through some of the things. But there's no reason you just start things from scratch. They're great templates that are out there that people use all the time. And when you're negotiating, especially with angels, like it's much easier to be like, this is just the standard form, rather than arguing over points and whether they know what is standard or not. You can at least give them the standard forms and go. It'll make your life hell of a lot easier.
So and I think Bill's referring to angels as an investor class, and so I'll make another classification. So angels, as Bill's referring to them, are people that invest their own money, and a fund is somebody that they've gotten other people to give them money, and they're investing other people's money. And so there's a spectrum of angels where you have super angels, or maybe your friends and family, and depending on their sophistication, they're investing in a host of different things, and do not make it complicated in any situation. Hyde Park Angels, for example, we're an angel group, and we act kind of like an institutional investor, but our angels get to invest in deal by deal. But we follow the same type of formula that a venture capital fund would follow, and so there's a spectrum of that. So based on that, so we got some terms out, and it's usually good to set this up. So when you're looking at bootstrapping, one of the things to look at is if you want to give up control or equity, if you're going to go and get an investment from equity, terms that you're going to hear us talk about probably are priced round, convertible, or safe. So now that we have some of the buzzwords out of the way, from your standpoint, Caitlin, you have a very promising company. You might want to talk just a little bit about it, but tell us your thinking about how you would go to market and get capital, and what was your process?
Yeah, so when I started Simple Mills, first of all, I bootstrapped the company for probably about a year and a half before we actually raised our first round. So I actually put $70,000 into the business, which was pretty much all that I could scrap up from my day job in consulting to put toward the business. And just as a little bit more background on the business, started out with the baking mixes that are made out of almond flour and coconut sugar and lots of very simple ingredients, less than 10 ingredients in every mix.
And absolutely delicious.
Yeah, and so during the time that I was bootstrapping, we were pretty much taking all of the money that we would get back from retailers and putting it immediately under production, and a lot of times we were stocking out as we were growing really quickly because we just didn't have enough to put into the product to make for the next run before we would get paid. So definitely some working capital issues there. So realized we were onto something, and so decided to start fundraising. And I'll tell you guys that when I first started fundraising, I thought that all that we would ever need would be $200,000. Which is particularly ironic because $200,000 was exactly what we needed to bridge us through to our first round. Very luckily, my parents strapped up. They actually reverse mortgaged their house to help me get through to that point. But as
there was absolutely no pressure on you. That's awesome. I like that. The whole family's all in. We're in. Don't worry about it. No pressure, Caitlin. We're gonna love it. We love these snacks.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Yeah, they're still investors today. But as we were raising our first round, how I thought about one, who we would have involved. I think one of the things that was really important that I realized through that process is who you actually take on as investors. So there are good investors out there and there are bad investors. There are ones who really want to take advantage of it, particularly before you kind of learn your stuff and learn about all of the different terms and all the things that might hurt you down the road. And so the first thing I would say is, kind of like Pete said, when you take on investors, it is like getting married. Make sure that they are people that you like and they're people that you want to be married to, because you are going to be married after that point.
And the bad thing about investors, and we are investors, is that the investor in the marriage could actually remove you from the marriage and still be in the marriage with your company. So that is something to just remember. That's why it's so important. Craig, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so from a bootstrapping perspective, it's the exact same thing, except it's partners. Who are your partners? And it's like a marriage, right? You're basically going into business with these people, whether they're kind of investors or not is sort of irrelevant at the beginning. You're finding people that you want to work with, and that's like a partnership or a marriage as much as it's an investor. And at Cleverbridge, we were fortunate. My 3 partners and I, we were together for 9 years without having anything happen. So we were really lucky that way, and I'm sure that a lot of people have investor stories that are similar, but they're also the bad ones too, the bad story.
So from your perspective, Pam, in your business, there's probably a point that you're like, wow, this is really starting to rock and roll. And maybe if we go raise some money, we can make it really rock and roll without getting to market faster and lose some buzzwords. First movers advantage, larger market share, blah, blah, blah. Like what did you decide that, hey, we're not going to go try to raise money, we're going to do this? What was your thinking?
So we were never in a position, I'll just give a little more background, which was, so we sold our first bag in August 2010. We hired our first employee in September 2012. So we covered a lot, including my partner Andy and I, over 2 years. I still, honestly, I look back, I don't really know how we did it, but we did. We grew the business quite significantly in that period of time. So we knew we had lightning in a bottle at that point. We knew that it was something very special. It was obviously it was working. We didn't need any capital for anything, except people were telling us that we did. But I think we looked at our business differently than anyone had ever done it before. We had 0 CPG experience. We'd never done this before. I think we just took it a very practical approach, what was rational, what made sense. We didn't do what we were supposed to do. So we didn't know what we would even do with the infusion of capital. It wasn't about that. What we knew we needed was some help with infrastructure, because up until a certain point, we were taking every single meeting, every single trade show. Andy and I literally got on the plane together. We had a theory that was less disruptive to our day-to-day business if we stayed together and went to every meeting together and every trade show together, because it was only the 2 of us that we at least were working that whole time. So, and we didn't have time to hire anybody ourselves, and we didn't really know how to build out the business ourselves if we were running a million miles an hour. So there was a point where we thought if we took in, private equity was knocking on our door, and we were thinking that if we took in one of these partners, we get some liquidity, but that wasn't even really the point. And there was some work picking up, but that wasn't even what we were thinking about at the point. We were trying to figure out how we needed help with infrastructure. We knew we couldn't maintain the pace that we were doing, just the 2 of us. And when I said that our first employee it was just an administrative assistant, and our second employee was 1 year later, another administrative assistant. So we had no sales force, it was just us.
And you guys clearly really like each other, because you guys are spending a lot of time together.
And we fortunately still do. So we've been able to, I think we could fight for it, I think.
Wow. Now that's a marriage. We'll write a book about
I
that.
think we've been fighting this whole time. But what, something that you mentioned was, giving up control. That also concerned us, that it was, our theory was, is that if we sold $1 of our company, we give up something. We had to answer to somebody. It didn't matter if it was 51% or whatever it was. We were selling ourselves. It was not going to be the same, no matter what it was. So we were always very cautious and nervous about that. So we ended up not. This is the conversation. A lot of this conversation happened in 2012. We passed on.
What I would be interested in, and I know that a lot of entrepreneurs would be thinking about, well, I need money for inventory, or I need to be able to sell into these stores. And it sounds like you were really disciplined in how you did it. And what's even more surprising is that you, or maybe for the better, you didn't have a clear understanding of CPG because that's where you came from. So you're like, screw it, I'll do it anyway. But like, what was your thinking in,
Well,
you know,
we'd have a retailer that would be like, well, you know, slotting, 10,000 a SKU. We're like, we don't pay slotting, but we just made it up. We just said it, like, that's just how we do. And they would say, okay, it's okay. So we did. We were very disciplined, and there were things, I mean, that's how we ran the business. We never did one deal, one transaction, one sale that didn't make sense and was not profitable. Now, I can't talk to date, I would say, we probably still did today, but up until, 2014, there was not one transaction that occurred that wasn't profitable. Everything had to be profitable.
Well, and I think that's a model. You were making decisions based on that formula versus we need more to get to more consumers in order to take market share. So that's a really disciplined approach. Chrissy, I know that you have a broad knowledge of the financial markets, and you probably are looking at different ways that you could bring capital into your business. Why did you choose convertible notes? What was your logic, and how did you assess your capital needs? And I think that would be a great place to start, and then you had the instrument that did it.
Yeah, sure. And just to be clear, again, we just started out with convertible notes, and literally a year and a half into it, we raised around, and I'm going to call it friends and family, but it was really business associates, actually a few customers, but friends and family round, so that we could actually take out the convertible debt. Again, the convertible debt was just that starting stone for us. But we wanted to make sure that the partners we brought in, we liked, and they validated essentially our business. They believed in what we were doing. And one thing too, I will say that after you've sold a business, you already sort of have credibility, and it's a little bit easier to raise around. But one thing that we did 2.5 years into it, we started another business. So we started with Tasty Trade 5 years ago. That's where we started with the convertible debt. We then brought in I'll call it Series A Friends and Family round. And then we actually started a separate company at the same time. That was Dough. And that's when we looked to Lightbank as a partner. And we looked at them a little bit differently. I think we've always sort of wanted to do business with Eric and Brad. We were in the same building and knew them, and they knew us. But what we did is we looked at it more strategically at that point. We're getting a little older. We've been there, done that. We want to do things faster. And so we said, hey, let's partner with Brad and Eric, who know marketing. We know the capital markets. We know everything about options trading. We know everything about sort of our side of the business, but in terms of really truly marketing and scaling a business, we said, hey, these guys know how to do it, and really brought them in as partners. And we look at them more as partners rather than just sort of bringing cash to the table. So that was a different way to look at it. I'll add one more layer on there, and that is then another, I guess, 2 years later, we brought in another VC, again for a different reason. We combined the two companies, Tasty Trade and Dough, and we brought in a VC because we wanted to really truly accelerate our growth, and that's happening, and it's super exciting for us. But we've done it too because there's not only does raising capital add validation, and you can get things done quicker when you're addressing people, or you have a few VC names behind you. That's certainly helpful. But also their resources. I touched on this earlier. Their resources, their connections. To be honest, media. Tasty Trade is our financial media side, and Dough is our front-end trading platform. The media side, that's not our area of expertise. So we looked for a VC that had some experience in this, could make some introductions, and so that's really why we approached it that way.
So that's really helpful, and I don't know if the rest of the audience with Skinny Pop, Tasty Trade, Dough, and Simple Mills, I'm starting to get a little bit hungry. I like the theme. All right, so Bill, we're gonna switch over to you because I think that one of the things is if you've had success, the likelihood you're going to be able to raise capital goes up significantly. You have relationships, you've proven it. There's a host of reasons that it becomes a little bit easier than if it's your first time. So Bill, when you're looking at a first-time entrepreneur and you're at Light Bank and they come in, what are some of the metrics you're evaluating to determine if you're going to make an investment? What are 3 key metrics that are important to you?
Yeah. I mean, it varies across every company you look at. I mean, the one thing I would say, and this is what I usually tell people when they're starting companies, and generally, most people generally do an angel round before they go to a venture capital firm to kind of raise money. Especially if you're a first-time founder, because it's just tough. Like if you're a first-time founder, you don't have the track record to kind of trade off of, and if you haven't raised any money, you don't have traction. So there's a lot of things that make it tough to go straight to a VC and have this magical idea, and limited traction.
They're so welcoming, right?
Yeah.
Magical idea. Okay, we love you. Come on in.
And so for most people,
have some skinny pop and little simple meals. We're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's the advice for most people, and again, I think for most first-time founders, the angel route makes sense to get started. If you need kind of the angel capital or a little capital to kind of get it started, to get some traction, or get a product behind it. Go find the people that you really respect in the space you're going at. Like, ask them as advisors. Tell them about your idea. Run them through what you want to do. And a lot of times those can organically turn into people who are going to back you and are going to invest in you. Ultimately, you're going to get the type of investors you want to help grow your company, and those are the type of angels I think you want behind you. They're going to help get your business off from the ground up. From a venture fund, talking to.
So I'm going to interrupt you because I think so. When we're talking about friends and family, and I think that what Bill's really alluding to as well is he's going to talk about how we get the metrics that you can start to measure against, but you're probably going to need some capital if you're in a position where you don't have any. And so when you start looking at the different resources, the safes, the convertible notes, those things are a lot easier because you got to create some sort of structure to allow people to invest. And usually, first-time entrepreneurs have no idea what they're talking about, and they're dealing with some crazy friends or a crazy uncle and his crazy family. Get some structure around that so you get a little cash in, and it makes it really simple. So now they got a little cash, they're going, things are looking good, they knock on your door and you open it up. And so what are you looking at?
I mean, first thing is the team and the founders that are there. And even if you're a first-time founder, what's your background? What's your success? What are the things you do that prove that this person's, that you're a winner, that you can compete, that you're the type of person you want to back? I mean, Andrew Mason was a first-time founder who came out. He worked with Eric and Brad before, and they knew he was special, and that's why they backed him. When he
founded Groupon, by the way.
And it was like the point when it started, and that was an idea. It probably was never going to work. It was not going to work. But they believed in Andrew, and they worked together, and unfortunately that came and worked out well. End of the day. But again, so first it's the individual, and it's digging out. Are they all in? Do you really, this is someone you want to back, you want to be behind? Are they the ones who can kind of drive this forward? And then it's what have they done with what they have? So, here's the resources they've put in the company, and this is what they've done. And then I guess the final part is, usually for first-time entrepreneurs, particularly when you're talking to, you're not going to probably invest in the first time you meet. And so you meet, and then maybe the first time you meet, it might be just how can I help? And honestly, VCs are generally, I think they're generally pretty helpful. I would say in Chicago, hopefully more than some other places too. The value we provide, if we're doing our job well, is we've got a good network. So you have to be able to connect with a lot of different people in a lot of different roles. And if you're a dick and you don't help people out, it's really bad to have a good network. You're useless. And so it's very, so you find that people are better networking or hopefully a little more genuine, but also just have a good network between people across other ways, and they're helpful. You talk to a problem, they'll connect you with some of this. And so I think that is that for you.
Kristen, did you want to add something?
Yeah, the other thing too, just in investing, I would say that one of the things that if you can show that there's some customer adoption, that you really are fulfilling a customer need. So if you can show some traction or just show that there is some interest out there, I think that really goes a long way too. hands down, absolutely the team, because there are things that don't go according to plan. And you need a team that can essentially pivot and figure out a way to make it work. So the team really does matter. But looking for that customer adoption, because the number one reason that startups fail is because they find out there's really no market need. So having a little bit of that traction with customers, I think, goes a long way.
And the one other thing I'd say, the easy part from a venture perspective is if the market someone's going after just isn't big enough, and you don't think it's a venture business, there's plenty of great businesses people can build. Maybe a $50 million business, $100 million business. That's fantastic. I mean, you can make enough money that your kids don't have to worry about stuff. But for a venture fund, which usually your success is defined by your outliers. So it's not defined by the $100 million exits. If you can find that $1 billion exit, that drives funds. I mean, that's where people really get the results. And so most venture funds are looking for those 500 to $1 billion, if not larger, opportunities. And if they don't think there's any path forward there, the market's just not big enough, it's probably not a venture funded business. Doesn't mean it's not a good business, it's not other sources of capital. Just for most institutional venture funds, it might not be a good.
Okay, so that's really important. And if you guys are taking notes, I would note that. If you're not taking notes, I'd recommend it. And this is why, is that your business may be a great business. It just is not a business that a venture capital fund is going to invest in. And that means this is something that I think a lot of folks don't fully appreciate, is you could have a $20 million business that's throwing off $2 million a year of free flow cash into your pockets. 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, that's $20 million. And nobody owns you, and you didn't give up any equity. And, as Bill just said, a venture capital fund does not want to invest in you. Because they don't want a $20 million business. They want a $200 million business so they can sell it for $2 billion. And I'm generalizing a lot, but I think that many of you have awesome businesses, and you can bootstrap them, and you can get them to 5 million or 6 million, and you can have a great business that you're going to create net worth for you and your family for a long time. So keep that in mind. So the other thing was we were talking about team and picking the right team. So Caitlin, Bill was talking about how they evaluate entrepreneurs. How would you recommend to evaluate a venture capitalist or somebody that might invest into your business? What do you look for?
I think one of the things that Bill mentioned is certainly proving themselves helpful. I actually was thinking about commenting there because I think our strategy, Simple Mills' strategy, shifted quite a bit, or like the strength of our strategy shifted quite a bit after we took on investors and after we had a board. Because we had a number of new advisors in our organization who could help us make decisions. And I'm young, and I haven't seen all of these things before. And so sometimes it's actually really nice to have that advice coming in.
So you had mentioned you learned, though, that some people that you were looking at were good, some were bad.
Yeah.
How could you provide some advice for something that's bad?
I would say, first of all, make sure that you have good counsel. Because a lot of things you will not have seen before, and so you can take a look at something and say, like, well, that's probably only going to affect me if a 5% scenario happens, or a 2% scenario. But quite honestly, when you're going into the business for the first time, you don't actually do a good job of estimating the risk of different things happening. And so we originally took a look at a specific deal where somebody was going to invest in us. And quite honestly, had I signed that paperwork, I would not own the business today. Simple Mills probably wouldn't exist today because I didn't fully understand the direction that this company was going to go in, and I was betting that 5% scenario wasn't going to happen. So make sure that you have good counsel and make sure that you consider those kind of smaller scenarios. And also, like, honestly, if I had trusted my gut on that one and said, at my deep core, I know that this isn't a good person to go into business with, then I probably would have been fine.
So I think you hit on a great point. And I heard Bill and Christy, and I would imagine Pam and Craig would agree with me, having a strong team is really important. So a lot of times you might have one or two people, and there's rarely do you raise your hand and say, I'm not strong. If you're raising your hand when we ask the question, do you think you're a strong entrepreneur, and your hand goes down, probably not a really good line of business to get into. So we're going to assume that you're thinking pretty positive about yourself, but you probably have some gaps. And what I think that Caitlin talked about is get good advisors. You said counsel, which I think was, but find an advisor that might know the market, that can help guide you. And what that would also help is, what Bill talked about, is they're looking for a good team, so they see good advisors, they'll be helpful, and then they'll see what have you done with what you have to the point you are, so what's the traction. So those become kind of critical elements. Pam, from your perspective, you were rocking and rolling, and you kind of went upstream. You went out of the venture capital market, and you got a private equity, and I'm not going to discuss the differences between private equity and venture capital, but for this purposes, for the group, private equity, upstream, from the investment stack or the investments, will help fuel growth of more mature companies typically. So you had to probably figure out, you had people that were knocking at your door, things were going really well. How did you evaluate in a little bit more of a mature place of who you were going to partner with?
So we had a couple deals happen over the years. In 2013, when we identified that we needed some help building out an infrastructure, we didn't have time to know the wherewithal to know how to do it. We identified an individual that had a lot of experience in the snack food space, had some successful exits, and had just created another brand that he was taking to market, and he built out a team of 5 salesmen. So it was him that he, like I said, was an expert, and chairman and CEO of a couple of different companies, and he had a team of 5 salesmen. So this wasn't really about getting money off the table. It wasn't about any capital needs. For us, it was all about infrastructure. So we sold him a small sliver of equity in our business. With that, we got access to the sales team. So with that, we finally had some leverage. We had people all over the country taking high-level meetings on our behalf that it wasn't necessitate just Andy and I to do it. So that was our first thing that we did in 2013, and that was all strategic. It obviously was some cash, but that wasn't what we did. We really wanted access to the sales team.
Did you all 3 travel together now that you had him too, or did you guys break that apart?
We sort of Andy and I still travel together.
All right.
Exclusively. But the partner, he was a great partner, and he helped us continue to grow the business. And so that was May 2013. Towards the end of the year, our sales just continued to climb, and we realized it was many times that we'd taken it as far as we could, we thought, on our own. And we started looking into doing a process for an exit. And so that was it was the end of 13. And right around the spring of 14, we had.
So I'm going to stop you for 1 second. A process for exit is really exciting for an entrepreneur. Maybe just define what that means, because some people might.
So now it was time that we saw a number that was satisfying to us at the end of the day, that carrot that we've been chasing. We felt like we grew it to a place that we would be pleased to exit and sell and hand it over to maybe more mature hands, experts. We needed, it was now next level time. And an exit at that point for us might have looked like maybe General Mills or Kellogg or any of the household names that you've heard of. For a multitude of reasons, we decided to hold off 6 months and wait to transact. And in that period of time, a very private equity firm came to us with a very compelling deal that was not a full exit that we initially thought we were going to do, just to be out. This was more of a, they were buying the majority of the company, but it was at a price and position that we were okay with. It wasn't 2 years earlier where we were concerned that they were gonna take us off course and we were giving up control and all these things. This deal was, we almost looked at as an exit, and anything that sort of happened later, partnering with them would be hopefully beneficial and hopefully would be a good outcome for us, but we weren't sure at the time. And it turns out they were fantastic partners. So we sold the majority of them in the summer of 2014. And in the late summer of 2015, they actually took it public.
And when you were looking at them, because you didn't have to part with them, what was the one thing that you decided to have that relationship? What would you advise entrepreneurs as they're looking to have capital partners? What would you say is some of the criteria or one of the things that you thought was important to having that relationship?
The criteria for which part of it?
If they're going to invest in you, you're not going to give it to anyone clearly.
They gotta bring something.
Before
You
people
know, we
traveling
just didn't
together
want somebody to
now.
come with cash. That's not what we were looking for. I mean, listen, I understand that sometimes that's just what you need, and you just need the cash, and you actually just want that person to go away, give me the cash, go away. That might.
It's funny because they usually don't
They
go away
usually
too
don't go
often,
away.
but
That's sort of a dream, I think. I don't think that people usually do that. So what ideally is that you want somebody that has some expertise. I mean, that's why we took that first investor in. Wasn't about cash. It was about him being an expert in the industry. So, and hoping that they were going to be very helpful to helping you grow the business. That wasn't, we weren't just taking anybody. We didn't want just anybody. We needed somebody that was going to bring something to the table.
okay, great. So just a quick summary kind of what we've talked about, I think as you're looking at your business, you're determining, is your business a business that's going to be a lifestyle business or something that isn't a good fit for a capital partner? Then you're deciding, do I want a capital partner? Am I going to give up control or am I going to give up equity? And also, if you make the decision, determining the right partner is really critical, and having the right advisors and the right supporters becomes important. So, kind of summarizing kind of the core things we've talked about has been around that. So, what I want to talk about for a little bit
Well, can I
is
say one thing?
Yeah,
I think that what
absolutely.
we talked about earlier was that when I did this deal with the investor, the first deal that we did, it was all about how little can we sell him. We didn't want to sell him a lot. We didn't want a lot of money. It was all about how little can we get away with and keep him interested and invested and have it matter to him, and at the same time sell him as little as possible because we did not want to give up equity. We did not want to give up control. And that was a real important thing. I think he certainly in hindsight, but I think at the time he would have wanted a lot more. We were unwilling to sell it.
nice job negotiating. All right. Okay, so with that foundation, the one thing that I'll tell you for sure, whether you're bootstrapping or you're raising capital, for your company to be successful, it needs to grow. And so thinking through what you're focusing on as your startup as meaningful growth triggers or metrics or business things to look at, you really need to have a core focus on what matters to your business to get that growth, so you're looking at it all the time. So that could be products that are coming off shelves or units that are being bought or transactions online. So Craig, from your perspective, what do you think, and I'm going to ask you to put your investor hat, because you're an angel investor with Hyde Park Angels, and when you look at a startup company that comes to you, what are metrics that are important to you to help you determine if they're growing at the rate that may be worthy of an investment?
So, it depends on the type of business. I mean, we're talking units or transactions. I mean, sales in some capacity. So something that tells me as an interested party that there's traction in that business. And so in my business, it's transactions, seeing that there's A, some transactions, B, that it's hopefully going up. Those are kind of the key things. Depending, there could be businesses where you have indications of success, but you're not actually at that success point yet because your product is it maybe takes 6 months to get to market if you're a hardware manufacturer. You don't have those hard sales yet, so it might take 6 months, 2 years for the sale that you did to turn into actual revenue down the road. So looking at sort of contracts that have been signed, letters of intent, engagements that you've entered into.
And Christy, from your perspective, what are some of the metrics you look at your business and that you think are top 3 things I got to keep an eye on to know how to help with my organization?
Yeah, as far as the metrics for us, being online, it's certainly, number of visitors coming to our site, converting to registrants, converting to opening accounts, and then actually, their activity in trading. Because one of the things that we do is we teach people how to trade on their own, be a do-it-yourself investor, and empower them through education. So all of those steps, all of those steps and key metrics matter to us, and we watch those daily. And so that clearly, any investor coming in, wants to see what we're looking at, wants to see what we're paying attention to, and how we're analyzing the business. So that's one thing, hands down. They're like, just give us your, what's your daily metrics you look at? What's your monthly metrics you look at? So.
Great. And how about you, Caitlin? What are key metrics for you or for people in your space?
Certainly store count, like dollar sales per point of distribution, which is basically how much you're selling per store. That's certainly a big one. The number of products that we have as well. You're kind of just basically looking at all of the different things that build up our revenue metric, because that's typically the way that companies in this space are valued.
So I think, Bill, go ahead.
There's one other thing I didn't say before, and I think it goes across pretty much any business you're going to see, is also the unit economics, which is basic common sense in terms of looking at the cost of acquiring a customer, what's that lifetime value, what's the payback. There are a lot of unsustainable businesses that have gotten into vogue, the last couple of years, which scare the crap out of me. And end of the day, I know for myself, and I think a lot of people I work with, again, those unit economics, like, can this be really a sustainable business? And it's got to be more than just traction. You got to see, can they actually create traction and build this sustainably and build a profitable business?
So let's build on this, because I think that what I heard from everybody, and Pam, do you want to weigh in as well? What are some of the key metrics that you look at as being the core drivers of your business?
I agree. We look a lot at ACV and velocity, and those are the drivers that we most concerned ourselves about. Were how much are we selling and how fast are we selling?
And I think that is right. So for the audience, I think that it's the consumption of the product that you have in the market, and you're really trying to use metrics to figure out. You can't always just base it on sales. What are leading indicators? What are the triggers that drive sales? And what are the elements that will support revenue growth? But I think then Bill talked on something that I would like to spend a little bit more time. It's called unit economics. So can you define that? Because that's a great word and we use it all the time, but most people don't really know what you mean by that. So
I mean, it's just stripping it down to the simplest thing. So like, depending on what your business is, easiest one is for a consumer-oriented business. It can be anything, but what is the cost of getting a customer from the inside? So if I have to pay this for marketing, I'm selling this product. Okay, what profit am I making off of each product that I sell? And can I pay back what I'm paying to acquire that? A lot of times these users will buy for multiple times. So you got to look at those things over time. But again, it's stripping it down to the base level of like, what do I need for that one customer? What are they going to pay up over time? And what is that like cycle?
excellent. And so, Craig, maybe you could explain how would you determine cost of acquisition of a customer, and how would you? We'll leave with that, and then maybe we'll follow up. Let's see how good you answer
Is
this.
this a math question?
Yeah.
Not good for me anymore.
Well, you're a nuclear engineer, for goodness sakes. If you can't do this, we're in big trouble.
Hey, I'm not running the plant, okay? It's not Homer Simpson over here. Cost of customer acquisition. So, how much are you spending? And I don't know the sort of VC definition of it, but how much are you spending to acquire that customer? It's people time, it's sort of ancillary costs. It could be travel. It's really a lot of, at least in Cleverbridge, in our business, it's really a lot of people time. It's the salaries we pay for our people who are involved in that project, not only to sign the contract, but to get it live. That's gonna be our cost of acquisition.
And Bill, from your perspective as well, to add on, I mean, there's also pure online businesses, and Christy, you probably have, you know, your cost of acquisition to get somebody. Well, if you could expand, like, there is an element of having online marketing campaigns and having, so maybe some other variables that go into that cost of acquisition.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is definitely some digital marketing, and that's, you know, you're paying for, you know, Facebook leads or, you know, Investopedia or, you know, other places. But some of the best places that we go, for example, because we have so much video, is YouTube. So YouTube is probably one of the biggest drivers for us, and we don't actually have to spend a lot of money on that. We just put our videos on YouTube. So the cost of that is, I'll essentially say nothing, right? Obviously, it costs us to produce the videos, but I also look at that, you know, a little bit differently. That's part of what we're producing every day, no matter what, and that is part of the funnel. And we have multiple stages, multiple steps of what we consider conversion. So we may pay, you know, X dollars to get that conversion for not just visiting the site, but actually signing up and giving us their email. And then we'll evaluate it at the next level, where if they actually open a brokerage account. And then, of course, from there, if they actually are trading. Very, very different metrics in each one of those levels. And I'll tell you, I'll pay not just, you know, $10 here or $20 there for an acquisition, you know, cost of acquisition for somebody who's actually going to trade, because I'll earn that back in a morning from that person. So, I mean, this is something where I'm willing to really, truly spend a lot more money down the road if I can get them to open an account at the end of the day.
Excellent. Okay, so figuring out how much it costs to acquire a customer, and then I heard lifetime value or LTV of a customer, so that becomes important. And I'm gonna just, because the first time they buy it, you may not pay the cost of acquiring them. But how many times do they purchase over their lifetime is lifetime value. So how do you calculate that? You know, Bill, what would you say? How do you calculate? Because everybody's gonna say, oh, they're gonna buy it 50 times a day for 50 years, and you know, what is a reasonable way to calculate lifetime value?
I mean, it's tough. You see a lot of people do some creative math, yeah, to get it in their favor. You know, and then people get caught on metrics, and everyone kind of looks like 3x, like CAC LTV, and doing those sort of thing. But generally, it's really important to understand it, though. Again, people, especially in commerce businesses, it's probably speak about it than I can. If you're miscalculating certain things, especially if you have a lot of inventory, you can blow up your business incredibly quickly. In terms of, you got to realize what your margin truly is. Like, what are you truly paying for customers? Because a lot of times people are not incorporating a lot of costs that are associated with there. So you really have to understand that to understand what's going on. But for LTV, again, it's what are customers paying? So you look at their average transaction, and then how many times they're going back. If you're a SaaS-based business, the equation there generally is what's the monthly recurring revenue and divided by your churn, and that gets your LTV. But for most consumer ones, you can kind of look at it. What are consumers paying each time they purchase, and how much time can I expect them to pay? Say 12, 24 months, depends how aggressive it is.
So like the person that eats the most skinny pop, I mean, like, is there like a diminishing returns of how many, like, will you always be skinny if you eat in it? Or what, when you look at it from a lifetime value, how do you look at it, Pam?
I'm gonna admit, this is way above my pay grade. We never looked at it this complicated. I mean, we were very concerned about our margin. We're very concerned about our product. We knew to, you know, tenth of a penny what everything cost, but I don't know. We didn't have to dig in this deep to get concerned.
I think one of the things too that we'll talk about, this is something, you had a product market fit. I mean, you had some growth with your product, and there was growth in it, so you were really controlling the unit economics of the costs, because it was automatically being profitable, which you started in the very beginning. So, you know, I think that's one of the unique where, like, people really wanted to be skinny when they eat popcorn. So, But I
Very
think-
lucky. The name was three parts, I think, the success was getting out. The name, the packaging, and the product delivered at the end of the day with the taste. It was very on trend. It was better for you. It was really coming, to age in 2000, right around that time. So we were able to capitalize on that.
So we talked about how do you find the capital partner. We talked a little bit about growth, but one of the things that you're going to demonstrate, whether you're bootstrapping or not, you want to understand what are the core drivers of your business and how do you measure them. Because if you don't measure them, you can't manage them, and if you're not managing your business, you might as well just be playing darts. So in that, everybody's agreed that having some metrics that they're measuring, the core elements of their business is critical. So now if you choose to raise money, being able to demonstrate to somebody that's going to be your capital partner the type of traction and the growth that you have on a recurring basis, so month over month or week over week or year over year becomes important. So we're going to wave a magical wand and everything's going well. Your business is growing, you got great metrics, you got your cost of acquisition is lower than your lifetime value, so they're eating a ton of it or they're using a bunch of it. So now I'm going to go knock on some doors to figure out if somebody wants to invest in my company. Because I've decided that I am not going to bootstrap. I need the capital to grow it for whatever reasons. So, Caitlin, from your perspective, what would you tell people as they start to look at how do they narrow down who to start knocking on doors for?
Well, the first time you start knocking on doors, I don't think you narrow it all. I think you talk to everyone, and people connect you to more people who connect you to more people. I think that it's really important in that first round just to have a lot of conversations and meet a lot of different investors.
Excellent. And for Bill, I'd imagine not everybody can get into Light Bank and pitch their idea. What do you find is the way that an entrepreneur does it in an effective way?
Clearly the best way is find a mutual connection. Like, even if it's a friend or if it's, another venture investor, another founder, I think those are the best paths to get in. The problem is it's a lot. You're looking at a lot of companies. Even like we used to, I was telling someone this before, like we used to have a link on our website. So like anyone can kind of apply, put their businesses out there, and we take a look. We just felt like it was unfair, because honestly, it would go in some box and we'd go through it, or we would respond and way too late. And sure, it was great, they can send something to us, but it was meaningless. And we didn't give them a fair shot. So find a mutual bond and someone who's connected and do it that way. I think that's the best way to do it.
I think that's completely true.
So finding somebody that's connected, and from your perspective, Craig, what advice would you give an entrepreneur of figuring out how to connect those dots? You're seeing that. I know you advise many entrepreneurs. What would be your recommendation?
So I think generally you want to spend time, you want to do this before you need it, right? I think that's one of the typical things people say. So make sure that you're building some of the right connections way before you need it, because investors want to follow you and track you. They're not going to meet you that first time and say, hey, let's do, I'll invest in this business, unless it's a super rare case. So to make those connections, though, you've got to network. You've got to go to the people that trust you and that you trust and see who they know. And obviously LinkedIn's a fantastic way of figuring out how you can get to people that you might want to get to. So you have to do your research to figure out who you might even want to get to. And then you kind of go in and work backwards to see how you can get to that person. But one thing I would say to what Caitlin said about talk to everybody, I think that's true, and it depends on to a certain extent I think that's true. It depends on your skill set. If you haven't raised before, you might want to talk to some people that you don't really want investment from to sort of learn the ropes a little bit. Preferably you've got somebody with you that can help you with it. And then you kind of stack rank and categorize and plan who you really want the investment from, and those are maybe in the middle after you've got a little bit of experience.
So Christy, let's say you get in, and so you connect to the right people, they open the door, you're in. Before you get in, you probably have a pretty good idea how much capital you should raise. But a lot of people don't know. Like I'll see ranges from 1 million to 5 million. Maybe if you could give us some insights, how do you figure out how much capital do you need, and why does that matter?
Whatever you think you need, multiply times 2. First of all, you should have some sort of business model and projections and idea, obviously, of where you want to take the company. And then try to price that out so that you have an idea of what you're ultimately looking for. That same financial model, whether it's a discounted cash flow or whatever you're going to use, that also will help you sort of price the value of your company. So you have an idea going in, because they will ask, what are you looking for? I mean, you want to have an idea of how much this is going to cost. But overshoot it a little bit in terms of dollars, because I'll tell you, you'll make mistakes and it's going to cost you more than you think it's going to get to that next round, and it's labor intensive to raise capital. It's worth it in the end, I think, but it's labor intensive. And just talking to a number of people, if you're new at it, it's one of those things that you want to hone your story, and investors ask really good questions. And you don't want to be standing there going, I don't know. So being able to sort of go back to the table, make sure that you're looking at this, overall, I think is really important. So, but running the numbers before you ever even get in front of them is important.
And I think it's a balance. I think that you'll see a range of people that will say, I need $200,000 and I'll get the profitability. And it's probably not going to happen. But you'll see somebody that might say, I'll take $20 million, and their business is worth $1 million. And so they're giving everything away. Why would they do that? And those are all exaggerations, but really the fundamental thing is you want to raise enough capital to sustain your business in order to hit the milestones that will allow you to either break even or raise another round of capital at the terms you want. And so that becomes an important way to look at it that you'll be able to figure out. So Bill, everything's good. So they're in your office, they got into you, you're ready to hear they know how much capital they need. What would you tell an entrepreneur to make sure they have in their presentation? And then we'll ask what they shouldn't have. But let's just start with what they should have in a investor presentation.
Yeah. I mean, the basic kind of presentation you're going to investors, I'm not sure it'd be very different from a venture investor or angel or friends and family. You should generally have,
Let's say it's you.
For me, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Obviously, you should have something on the team, like what have you done in the past? Who are you? Who's a part of it? You should have something on the current status of the business, showing off the product. Yeah, that's there. You should have something on the unit economics, the baseline of like, how does this business work, and can we scale it? You should show something with the traction. So here's you started. This is what we've done in the business. This is what I've done so far. And so hopefully showing at least an early track record of, okay, this is what I'm accomplishing. I'm nailing down these things. I get a path to there. You probably want to put in how much you're raising. I would do not put valuation. Let other people come to that. And the other thing we're talking about in terms of like how much you want to raise.
Chrissy's dying to get in. Go ahead. You're in. I can see it. I mean,
We never put that in the presentation. It's a conversation.
You might have even put the amount. I mean, again, and the thing that with amount you're raising, which we haven't said, there's like an incredibly high correlation between how much you're raising and the valuation you get. And so you're often going to give up 20, 25, 30%, no matter what you raise. And so sometimes for companies, like, you might as well raise more, because honestly, they're going to own the same amount anyways. And so it's just something to be mindful of.
So what he's saying is that if you say I'm raising $3 million, and most people that would be coming in, they would only want to give up 30% of their business. So it's assumed that they think that their company is valued at $7 million. But what the folks are saying is that the conversation becomes natural, and I'll give you a little tip. From me to you, from an investor to an entrepreneur, but what I would use is say, we're letting the market determine what our valuation is, and we're excited about the number of investors that have interest. We'd love to hear your opinion on what you think our business should be valued at. A little tip, right?
I would say the one exception is when you're doing if you're doing your very first round and you're doing like a seed one, and you're technically going to people that aren't in the business of pricing, you need to kind of have, like, again, you can have a convertible note with a cap and just have a note or something ready. and maybe or maybe not it's the best valuation you can get, but having something locked
We
and ready.
have a
to go.
pen and a note with
Like,
you. I like this guy. He's like closing. ABC, always be closing.
I mean, you're gonna know, you can find out kind of the ranges of like, you know, you check out other companies in the area, what they're raising, like in Chicago, you can see what other people are raising at, and oftentimes kind of having the term ready to go, it's gonna make it a hell of a lot easier, especially if you're going present.
Yeah, and just, I mean, looking at comps or trying to at least do some research ahead of time of other companies, and, you know, it's hard when you're a startup, but if you say this is what I aspire to be and be able to at least have some level of comparison, I think that's
Yeah, I actually have a running spreadsheet of all of the companies that sell in our space and what they sell at, how much they were making before they sold, because that's really in our space how companies are valued. And so if you can understand for your space how companies are valued and track those valuations, then it gives you a leg to stand on when you're establishing your valuation and around.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask a quick question, and I'm hoping that we'll get a quick answer, but we may not. So the question is, should I ask a venture capital firm to sign an NDA? And Bill, what is
Never do
your
it.
perspective on that?
They'll never do it.
Yeah. So there's another tip. Do not expect a venture capital firm or an institutional investor group like us to sign an NDA. And here's the logic is because we are not in the business of stealing ideas. We're in the business of investing in ideas. And there's so many different ideas that you're seeing. There's no way to protect yourself on what you're looking at. And there's so many different ways to interpret that. So the likelihood that you're going to get an NDA signed is zero. You might get it from some folks, but I guess zero is low. How about that? That's pretty fine. All right, so I wanted to give that question. We've covered a lot of ground. I mean, we've covered, do you bootstrap or do you raise capital? What are some of the metrics you need to look for? What kind of relationships do you want to have, both as a VC and entrepreneur? How do you prep and connect? And in our next program, we're going to spend a lot more time on the dynamics of fundraising and what does that look like. So we'll get into more specifics, but this is kind of just high-level thoughts around it. And what we're going to do now is we're going to ask each entrepreneur to say one thing that they would do again or one thing they wouldn't do. So it can only be one. That you're going to give advice to them as entrepreneurs. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A. The other thing that I would... our Twitter handles were displayed, but at Hyde Park Angels is our Twitter handle. Tweet questions there. We'll be sure to answer in the Q&A if we can. So I am going to start right in the middle with Christy. What would be the one thing you would tell somebody to do or not to do as a first-time entrepreneur?
I would say that raise money when you can, not when you need it, and that is something time and time again I would do, because you're in a much better negotiating position, and it's much easier to do. It's an easier story.
Excellent. Pam?
I would say focus on your business. I mean, there's a lot of it that's very distracting, and I think that the most important thing that we did was to try and stay focused and disciplined on running our business and not forgetting about your business while trying to raise money. Focus on your business and bring it down.
It is, I'll say it again, I said it at the beginning. The game is not about raising capital. It's a lot of fun and it's exciting. It's about growing your business, and the capital is to support the growth. That focus is critical. Great advice, thumbs up. Craig, what is your, and Christy, I'll give you double thumbs up. I was like, now I'm like rating, but I was just trying to think of a good segue to Craig.
Yeah. Do you have any more thumbs? You ready?
I'm going to do a little dance,
All
and
right,
it's
good.
going to be all kinds of good stuff.
So what Christy said was raise money when you can. What I'm going to say does not conflict with what she said, which is bootstrap as long as you can. And that doesn't mean bootstrap to the point that you need money and you're about to go out of business, but the longer you can bootstrap, the longer you can build your business and focus on your business, the better valuation, the more ownership you're gonna have. In the long run, you're better off. So in Christy's case, I mean, clearly she has had a lot of success, so she could go out and raise money very quickly from other people. She probably didn't even need to, but she did. In my case, you know, we bootstrapped from the beginning, and we never needed to raise money. We could have, and we'll get to that maybe in the second half of that question.
Bill?
I think it's on a similar note, the same sort of thing. It's that really capital is the most expensive capital you'll ever get. And so, yeah, the more you can push it off, the better.
What do you mean by the most expensive?
I mean, you're gonna have to give the most dilution for the least amount of capital, right? And so just be very cognizant of it. So the more you push it off, again, the more you can own it. And dilution is very, very, very important for you as a founder. The more you can own the company, ultimately, it can make a very material difference, obviously. And the other mistake you see at times, especially early founders, is like people who, and it's always cool to kind of start a company with like 4 of your friends. But if you have 5 founders that you're starting together, realize you're dividing it all into enough bits. So you're only starting with 20%, take money, you divide that in a third, all of a sudden it gets pretty small. And so like creating more founders and a lot of things out there, you gotta really think about how much of a concentrated position you have and protect the equity that you fought for, you know, and you worked so hard for.
It sounds like 5 would be better for a band, not for a company type of deal. All right, so Caitlin, you are best for last. What would be your piece of advice? Because you're doing it right now as we speak, and you've been having a lot of success. What would be the one tip that you would provide?
I would say that 100% of nothing is still nothing. And so you have to strike the right balance between figuring out when you can no longer accelerate the company without outside money, or you can't accelerate it fast enough. So our company operates in a very competitive space now. Natural food has become a very competitive category. And so we need money to accelerate our company and to get where we're going much faster than companies have had to in the past. And so we kind of recognized the point of where we had kind of done enough to demonstrate that we were really on something, but then also realized that by getting an influx of capital and a good amount of capital, we could hire people who could accelerate this business so much faster than I could by myself.
Excellent.